Okay, everybody, welcome to the Fig Tree. My name's Bruce Crowther, and I'm very proud to be the director of the Fig Tree. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to Izzy and June, who's been providing the music for us this morning. And of course, a big thank you for you all for coming today and giving up your Sunday afternoon. Because I do believe there's something special going on today in London, some sort of sports event. I think last night was probably the big event, which everybody said that was the night you were supposed to find out. Everybody remembers where they were on that night. The biggest event in English history, athletic history, I believe. I don't know about you lot, but me and Ben were watching Team GB lose to South Korea on penalties. So we obviously made the wrong choice last night, but hopefully today we've all made the right choice by being here instead of watching Andy Murray beat Federer, which I believe is happening at the moment. So thank you for giving up your Sunday afternoons and coming over to the Fig Tree. I hope you have a lovely time here. No more to do. I want to introduce you to our guest speaker, who's Louise Kaplan. Louise is a very, very special. We're very, very proud to have Louise, very lucky to have Louise here. On our board at the back there, just in the corner, for those who haven't seen it, we have a board of the people who supported the Fig Tree in the early days, when we say it's the most important time of all. It's in the beginning, when that's when it matters the most. And Louise's name is on that board. I don't think she's seen it yet.
I haven't seen it yet, no.
She's on that board of our very special supporters. We have so many special supporters, including our volunteers, working very hard behind the counter here. Some of the volunteers are here, Joe and Jackie, and Steve Figglestone, who's our biggest social media fan. There's so many of them. Rita as well at the back here, who's a director, a great supporter. So many of them. I don't like to pick out any particular one especially, but I would like to make a special mention to Sabina, who's sitting at the back there. Stand up, Sabina. I'd like to make a very special mention to Sabina because she's one of our very, very special supporters. She's given us something very important to be with us today, which is special for us. She's on that notice board as one of our original donors, but amazingly, Sabina runs the only fair trade shop in the whole of Dubai. So that deserves a round of applause. So we're very lucky to have supporters like Sabina, and thank you so much for being with us today to share a special day with Sabina. So over to Louise. I say we go back a long time. Louise used to, in fact, she set up Trading Visions, I believe.
I did help set it up, yeah.
She set up Trading Visions, which is the campaign development education arm of Divine Chocolate. You probably all know the Fig Tree is very strongly associated with Divine Chocolate. We've had long connections with Divine Chocolate for many, many years, right from the beginnings of Divine Chocolate, mainly because of our connection with Nuco Forady in Ghana. And for those of you who don't know, that's why I wear these shirts on special events like these, because it reminds us of the people we're doing all this for, and of our brilliant friends in Nuco Forady in Ghana who grow the cocoa that goes into this fabulous Divine Chocolate. And if there's anybody in this room who's never tasted this chocolate, please do. This is the best chocolate in the world. Yeah. But
it's true.
It's the best chocolate in the world. And certainly if you look around you, even though we're in the early days of the Fig Tree development, you see the empty cabinets, soon to be filled. We're in very, very early days. We've got a long way to go. But already you can't fail to notice our many connections with Ghana. For example, this plaque here made by a craftsman in Nuco Forady in honour of the Fig Tree, our globe in the corner, and so forth. So we have strong connections with Nuco Forady and with chocolate. But today we're not going to be talking about chocolate, we're going to be talking about tea. It's tea at the Fig Tree, not chocolate at the Fig Tree, which will come later on. But today it's tea at the Fig Tree. And just recently, we just changed over to Just Change Tea. You get the pun, I'm sure it's the deliberate one that you intended. And we are very, very proud. We're proud of all the products we sell in the Fig Tree. We want to make a big point about the people who grow the products, the people who are so important about products like the cocoa, not the manufacturers or whatever, it's the people who grow this cocoa, who do work so hard and often don't get a fair price and a fair deal for it. So Just Change Tea is very, very special to us. We're very proud to just make that change over recently. Again, it goes back a long time. The founder of Just Change is an amazing chap called Stan. Louise might tell you a little bit about Stan, but I've known Stan for many, many years through Oxfam, going back a long time. And I just wanted to share with you something, because later on we're going to have a bit of time for questions. And somebody might, very observant people, might want to ask the question why Just Change Tea doesn't have the fair trade mark on it. And I want to take you back to the early days when Stan founded Just Change, and me and Stan used to have these very long discussions about fair trade. And Stan, for very good reasons, had reservations about the fair trade system that we have. And his argument was that fair trade, as we know it with the fair trade mark, doesn't go far enough. My argument in exchange, which I still believe today, okay, it doesn't go far enough, but it's a damn sight better than the alternative. And that would be my message to you today. But Just Change goes a lot further than that, and you'll hear from Louise how and why that is the case. So now that we've got the fig tree, we're very proud to support Just Change, with or without the mark, because it goes beyond the fair trade system that we know of, and you'll hear a lot more about that. So we're very, very proud to be supporting that. And with that, I'm going to hand you over to Louise.
Thank you.
Well, it's a special offer, by the way.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Bruce, for that very warm introduction, and thank you all for coming today on a Sunday afternoon. I'm really delighted to be here. This is the first time I've been able to come to the fig tree, and it's so nice to see it come to fruition and you know, be up and running. And it's wonderful to be here in the world's first fair trade town as well. So as Bruce has said, I'm going to talk to you about Just Change. And Just Change, much like Garstang and the Fair Trade Towns movement and the fig tree, is another initiative which started with a flash of inspiration from a group of like-minded and impassioned people who really wanted to do something to improve a situation, to do something good. And from that, a movement has sprung up and continues to grow. And Just Change aims to promote, as Bruce has said, a model which is sort of fair trade and beyond, if you like. It's about an alternative and fair model of global trading, which is based on economic justice, on transparency, and on solidarity between people around the world. And Just Change started in India as a response to the uncertainty and the volatility of the conventional market, which causes poverty and unpredictability for producers all over the world in all kinds of products. Just Change India brought their members together to trade with each other on fair terms, and we'll hear more about that later on. I'll explain how that started and what they did. And today, Just Change is a growing global initiative that's run almost entirely by volunteers. So here in the UK, I'm the only paid staff member. I'm part-time. The rest of the activity in this country is done by volunteers. We have activities in India, a little bit in Germany as well, and all of that is done with very few paid staff. So it really is done by people who are passionate and who care about what they're doing and want to make a difference. And in the UK, Just Change uses our fairly traded tea as well as spices and soap from India. And what we're trying to do with that is not only generate a fair return for producers in India, but actually opportunities here in the UK in disadvantaged communities for enterprise, for income creation, for skills development. And so what we do here in the UK is just as important as what we're trying to achieve in India. And that's very central to the Just Change philosophy, if you like. Just Change India produced many things. You'll see on the, I don't know how far back you can see this, but you can see here there's chili production. Oh, look at that. Magic. I didn't know that. Don't know if I can do it again, I'll try. So there was a picture of some chilies and some, oh no, it's all gone horribly wrong. Here we go. So we've got chili production, this is soap making down here. So in India, they're involved with a range of products, but the one we're going to concentrate on today is the one which we sell mainly in the UK, and that is tea. So, see if I can do that again, my magic trick. No, it didn't work. There we go. So, hands up if you drink tea. Is there anybody? I won't pick on the people that don't. There's a few over there that don't. But almost everybody put their hand up. And you would get a similar response if you asked that question anywhere in the world. It's something which is sort of universally loved. And Camellia sinensis, which is the Latin name for the tea plant, gives us the most popular drink in the world after water. It's something which is steeped in ritual and history. You know, the idea of offering tea to a guest when they come to your home, chatting over a cup of tea, those are sort of warm human customs which are shared the world over. So tea is something which is very sort of evocative and very much part of the human spirit, if you like. And tea as a drink is thought to have been created in China about 5,000 years ago. And myths abound as to precisely how that happened, but so the story goes, an emperor was out, they took rest under a tea bush because they actually, if they're left to grow very tall, up to 16 metres in height. His servant boiled some water to make lunch or whatever it was that they were having. Some tea leaves fell into the pot. They gave it a go, voila. You know. So that's the story, but whether that's true or not, we'll never know. But it was brought to Europe by a Portuguese Jesuit father called Jasper de Cruz in 1560. So I'm not sure if he sort of achieved anything else of note, but we have a lot to thank him for anyway, in that he brought tea to Europe. And the fashion for tea shops in Britain started in the 1860s, and surprisingly, this was a kind of a pivotal moment in female emancipation, if you like, because it was socially acceptable for an unmarried, unchaperoned lady to go to a tea shop to drink tea, and that gave an opportunity for women to talk about all kinds of things which scared the authorities, and was sort of an important moment in, you know, the suffragette movement that happened and so on. So tea has a real kind of place in our history. It's always been a drink that crosses social divides, you know, as much for the masses as for those society ladies. And the tradition of the tea break stems from the early industrial era, when factory workers who would start very early in the morning, you know, 5 or 6 in the morning, would need something to tide them over between starting work and lunch. And so stopping for tea, you know, that's where that tradition came from. And here in Britain today, we are still very serious tea drinkers. And actually, while I was looking for these photos, I went onto the UK Tea Council website, and they have a little counter in the corner of the homepage that ticks along and says how many cups of tea have been drunk in Britain that day. And by 17 minutes past 11 in the morning, well over 70 million cups of tea had been drunk. Now, our population is 63.1 million, so I think maybe that was an over-enthusiastic estimate. But you get the idea, anyway, of obviously they're self-promoting, but tea is clearly very popular and very important to the British nation. So that's a little bit of tea trivia to whet your appetite, as it were. So Just Change tea comes from India, and tea in India is very much woven into the fabric of everyday life there, just as it is here. And in India, it's drunk as chai, which you'll have an opportunity to taste after the presentation. There's some being brewed up as we speak. And chai is a hot, sweet, spicy mixture of black tea leaves, sugar and spices such as cinnamon, cardamom, cloves, things which actually grow in and around tea bushes. You know, that's probably why they sort of came together in the first place. And this couple here, they're members of Just Change India. They grow tea outside their home, and they're enjoying their cup of chai. And as it says here on this note on the bottom, they pride themselves on respecting the forests where they live and the land where they grow their tea, and not using any chemicals. And that's true of Just Change producers more widely. Now, as well as being a major tea drinking nation, India, of course, is a major producer of tea. So in 2010, the top 5 producing countries in the world were, in order, China, India, Kenya, Sri Lanka, and then surprisingly Turkey, of all places. But India produces twice as much tea as Kenya, so that just gives you an idea of the sort of the magnitude of tea production there. And so it's a big business in India. And tea production is very labour intensive. You know, much like coffee, like cocoa, it's not an agriculture which can be easily mechanised. You know, tea has to be picked by hand, and so there are a very large number of people, millions of people in India, who make their living from tea. Either as hired labourers, so being paid to work on plantations which are owned by tea corporations to pick the tea, or growing their own tea on small plots of land. Both of those scenarios are very challenging. So working conditions on tea plantations, which are owned by corporations, they vary, but they can be very poor. There's problems with, you know, employment rights, the treatment of women, various challenges. And for those that grow and sell their own tea, well, they're faced with a different set of challenges, because they have to contend with the unpredictability of the market and the way that prices can go up and down, and from one season to the next it can be a precarious living. So whether you're picking tea for somebody else or growing tea for yourself, life can be very tough. And our Just Change tea comes from this beautiful place here, from the Nilgiri Hills in Tamil Nadu in southern India. I think there is a map at the back of the room. You can have a look at that later and see where the tea comes from. And Nilgiri means blue, the blue hills. And you might be able to see in this picture here, there is a sort of a bluish hue to the skyline. And tea grows mainly in tropical or subtropical climates in various places around the world, in East Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and so on, Turkey. But it can grow in cooler conditions. And actually, I was on holiday recently in Cornwall, and they grow tea in Cornwall. Can you believe it? There's a British company that's growing tea in Cornwall, and I, for shame, can't remember what it's called, but I'm sure if you Googled it, you could find it. So there you go. If you want to try some British grown tea, it's out there. I don't know if it's any good, but it's out there. So here we are, still in the Nilgiri Hills, and you can see the rolling hills and this is a tea field, tea plantation, and you can see it's quite steep. And now the best quality tea does grow at elevation, so the altitude makes the tea mature more slowly, which apparently helps it acquire a better flavour. So good tea comes from hills, such as the Nilgiri Hills. And here you can see a tea plant close up. And the way that tea is picked is the top 1 to 2 inches of the tea bush is what's picked off. So it's sort of at waist height. And these top 1 to 2 inches is called the flush. And a tea plant will produce a new flush every 1 to 2 weeks during the growing season, when it's growing at its fastest, when it's replenishing at its fastest. So plucking the flushes, don't say that too quickly, across a large tea plantation is a sort of a constant. It's like painting the Forth Bridge. It's a constant task, and that's what tea pickers do. They rove up and down the plantations every day, continually picking the flushes. But a tea plant takes about 4 years from seed before it's mature enough for those top leaves to be picked. And so if you are a tea producer and you're faced with a situation where prices have dropped or crashed and they're not very good, you don't really have the option to just sort of pull up your tea and plant something else and start again, which is why it can be a very precarious living for people who are dependent on it and at the mercy of the world markets. A tea bush, interestingly, if it's left, they're pruned to remain at waist height, but if they're left undisturbed, they will apparently grow to heights of sort of 16 metres, which is kind of quite astounding. And you can, I've never tried it, but you can have wild tea, which is grown, which is picked from tea bushes which have just been left to grow. But the best tasting tea, and tea is pruned to remain at waist height so that it's constantly fresh and renewed, and that's what gives it a really good flavour. You don't want old tea from an old tree. It's not good. So, Just Change tea is grown by a people called the Adivasi people in the Nilgiri Hills around a town called Gudalore, so in the Gudalore Valley region. And Adivasi means first people in the local language, and the Adivasis are the tribal peoples of India. They make up about 8% of the 1.1 billion people who live in India, and they're found not just here in the Nilgiri Hills, but in various parts of the country. And the Adivasis have a different culture to the majority non-tribal population. They live with a set of, kind of values and culture outside of the Hindu caste system of social stratification. But they are among India's poorest people, and they have historically been badly treated and faced really serious challenges over the years, particularly a lack of access to decent social services like schools, medical care, and so on. They've often, because of being on the sort of margins of society, they've often ended up indebted unfairly to landlords, and they've often had their ancestral land rights challenged or taken away by various factors, including mining corporations where land has been cleared for mining, and tea plantations, corporate agriculture as well, where land has been claimed for commercial production of crops. So the Adivasis have faced many challenges over the years, and there are 5 Adivasi tribes in the Gudalore Valley region. which are listed here. I won't attempt to read them all, but you can see them on the screen. And in this part of India, the Adivasis have a long tradition of living in and respecting the forest. They're forest people, essentially. And as you'll see here, the tribes are traditionally forest dwellers, honey gatherers that gather wild honey from the trees in the forest. And the forest is... I'm sorry? What?
Refugees at the bottom.
There are some refugees. I've actually been wanting to find out more about this, and I hope to have an answer for today, but I didn't manage to get one back. I did send an inquiry to my contacts in India to say who are the refugee groups and where did they come from and what's their history, but I haven't had an answer yet, but I'll get it for you if you'd like to know. So over the years, the Adivasis of the Goodlaw Valley have had their ancestral land rights threatened, particularly by large tea companies who have wanted to use the land to plant tea. But after a long struggle, they now actually own their own tea plantation and their own tea marketing body called the Adivasi Tea Leaf Marketing Society. They're growing, they're producing, they're selling their own tea, which is the tea that you're drinking here today. And so their story is quite an amazing, well, very amazing, and a really inspirational one. And I'm going to tell you a bit about what happened and how that came about. These two people, oh, it's moved on here. Wow, there we go. These two people, Stan and Mari Thikekra, Bruce has mentioned Stan already, are the two people who sort of helped start the story and who founded Just Change in India. And Stan and Mari have lived in Goodlaw and worked alongside the Adivasi people for over 30 years. And in the mid-1980s, they helped the 5 Adivasi tribes in the region come together to fight for their land rights. And in '86, they started Accord, an activist group, which was an attempt to try and, stand up against the authorities and get their lands back for the people that had lived on them for centuries. The challenge was, without papers that showed legal ownership, without something in writing that said this land is ours, the Adivasis had a real battle on their hands to be able to stay in their homes, to stay in the forest and continue their way of life. And so what Stan and Mari and the Accord group did was support them to organise themselves and come together to assert these rights as one body rather than as separate tribes. Some Adivasi youths volunteered to go from village to village to urge people to unite, to be confident and to try and stand up to the people who were threatening their livelihoods, however powerful they might seem to be. And they also formed sangams, village sangams, and sangam is a word in their Adivasi language. It's a name for the unity of the Adivasis for coming together. And they formed the Adivasi Munetram Sangam, or AMS, in 1988 to represent all of the Adivasi in the Goodlaw region. So they brought all of the tribes together and just said, this isn't on. We're going to come together, we're going to fight this, and we're going to keep our land. So, here we are. On the, I think we've missed a slide. Here we go. Come back to that in a minute. And on the AMS website homepage, I was looking at it the other day, and there's a picture of 2 children walking to school through the forest, which their ancestors have fought so hard to preserve for their communities. And the caption under the picture says, "Paths are made by walking." And it was in this spirit of forging a way forward, of creating a path, that the Adivasis marched. They walked for their land rights. And this campaign culminated in a massive protest of more than 10,000 Adivasis on the 5th of December in 1988. And I do have a picture of it here. There it is. So it's an old picture, so it's a bit grainy, but you can see, rows upon rows of people marching. And this was the first public display of solidarity and of defiance by Adivasis in the region, who had traditionally been marginalised and who had not been able to come together and speak up for their rights. So this was a huge moment in their history, and it really surprised the authorities and it really put their cause on the map. So the story goes that 2 police officers were dispatched to, in anticipation of this march, which everyone knew was going to happen, which just shows how they vastly underestimated the number of people that were going to turn up and the scale of frustration and upset and determination among the Adivasis. So 2 police officers were faced with 10,000 people. It did remain peaceful, but it really kind of woke people up, woke the authorities up to the magnitude of what they were facing. And AMS continues to be the political voice of the Adivasi community in the Gudalur Valley, and they work today not only to secure land rights, but they're also looking at improving the health, the education, and building more secure livelihoods for their members. So how did they come to own their own tea plantation? This was the next part of the story. These carrying tea leaves on their heads to be collected, to be taken to the factory. And how did that come about? Well, tea was pursued as a solution to one of their biggest challenges. So, as I said before, when the land wasn't theirs on a piece of paper, and also when it wasn't productive and it wasn't generating an income, it was very difficult for them to assert any legal right to keep it, basically. And so, in 1989, the Adivasi started planting tea on the land around their homes, and in 1992, with the financial help of an NGO, they were actually able to buy a 175-acre tea plantation called the Madhuvana plantation. And the decision to plant tea wasn't accidental, it was very purposeful, and it was a strategic one, because tea is a permanent crop. Once it's in the ground, it's there, it's not sort of harvested and removed and then, started from scratch again. Once the tea bushes are established, they're there permanently, and they can yield tea for more than 50 years. So it's a permanent crop which helped them assert their ownership of the land. It's also the main industry in the Gudalur region. And so entering the tea business would give the Adivasis an opportunity to be right in the hub of the economic, political and social activities of the region, and to be involved in important discussions and assert their place really within that economy. So it was a very important decision. Tea was traditionally a rich man's crop. So the decision to plant it was also a symbolic one. It was letting powerful landowners know that the Adivasis were no longer afraid to stand up for themselves, to try and become economically self-reliant, and to cultivate the land which was theirs historically. So they raised their own tea nursery. They trained some young people in managing the tea nursery and trained their members in tea cultivation. And today, more than 1,000 Adivasi farmers in the region are tea growers. And they're cultivating tea on the plantation, the Madhuvana plantation, which is theirs, as well as on their own small plots around their homes. And this is one of those tea growers, Deepa. Her name's Deepa. And every day, she and her fellow AMS members pluck the new leaves from the tea bushes. Now, can anyone remember what the leaves on the top are called? Just to see if anyone's been listening. The flushes, brilliant, thank you. I like to just check in, make sure everyone's been paying attention. And each tea bush is trimmed of the flushes every week or so, and this keeps the bushes, as I've said, low in height and ensures a regular grow of fresh leaves to keep the tea really, really fresh and of really good quality. Now, as we've heard, the forest is very important to the Adivasis culturally, spiritually, and in terms of their whole way of life. The well-being of the forest is important to them, not just as a productive thing which ensures their livelihoods, but for the sake of the forest itself. And so tea cultivation has been done in a way which respects the forest. And so while some trees, of course, had to be cleared to make way for their tea plantation, for the Madhuvana plantation, as many as possible were left in place. And you can see that here on this picture, the plantation's here, and there's quite a lot of tall, very old established trees that are still standing. This preserves the habitat for forest birds and other animals, but it also binds the soil together on those steep slopes so that in the rainy season it's not washed away.
That's very important.
Very, very important, especially where there's an awful lot of rain, which there really is in the Nilgiris. And here one of the Just Change UK volunteers is visiting the plantation, and she's helping the plantation manager, actually, is this other person here, and his daughter pick guava fruit from the trees. So the trees also provide an additional, source of foods and of income by being productive. So having successfully built up their own tea plantation, this was fantastic, but the Adivasis then faced a new set of challenges. So as they got into the tea business in the 1990s, like so many producers of cash crops, crops that are sold for money, both domestically and abroad, they were faced with unpredictable and sometimes very low prices. They had to sell their tea to the local tea processing factories. They didn't have the infrastructure, and they still don't have the infrastructure to process it themselves. So they were selling to to the factories and to private agents who would sometimes offer unfair prices and sometimes even fix the scales when the tea was being weighed, so that they would show a lower weight, and they were given a bad deal basically at the roadside. So going into the tea business brought a whole new set of injustices, of challenges, if you like. So once again, they decided to take things into their own hands, and in 1999 they formed the Adivasi Tea Leaf Marketing Society, the ATLM. They're a great fan of catchy names, as you can hear. And what ATLM does, and this is the ATLM truck shown here in the picture, what they do is they buy tea from their members at a fair and stable price, and they sell it on to the factories. And so by selling their tea on to the factories collectively, instead of individually, instead of operating as individual farmers, they were able to have better bargaining power, and they were actually able to convince one of the factories in the region to work with them and to agree a minimum floor price for the tea, such that if the local market price ever dipped lower, which it has done at times over the years, the ATLM producers would always be guaranteed that stable minimum price. And so this has been a really, really important thing in terms of ensuring decent livelihoods. And this truck is used to collect tea from the villages where people are growing tea outside their homes, as well as from the plantation. The ATLM workers weigh the tea at the roadside. They pay the growers an agreed and fair price at the point where they collect it. Nobody has to wait for their money until the tea is sold at auction later on. They get their money there and then. And they have a very transparent pricing system. So the local tea prices are announced by all of the local factories on the 10th day of every month. That price is based on the price of the tea sold at the most recent auction. So ATLM considers that auction price and then decides a fair price for their members, which is usually higher than that, making sure that it doesn't go below the minimum floor price that's been set. So this long struggle to stand up to the powerful and to take their livelihoods into their own hands and to assert their land rights, start their own tea plantation, start their own tea marketing society, has been a really incredible journey, and it's touched and changed the lives of thousands of Adivasis in the Goodalaw Valley. And there are many, many people in the Goodalaw Valley who could tell you a story about the impact that it's had on them. But I just want to share one anecdote with you from a man called Bowman. And Bowman and some of his fellow AMS Adivasi members went to visit Germany in the 90s on an exchange with some people in Germany who wanted to support the Adivasis and help them create a market in Europe for their tea. And Bowman saw Just Change tea and other fair trade tea being sold in the shops in Germany, and he was completely taken aback by the sense of solidarity that he experienced from people in Germany who wanted to support the Adivasis. And he returned to India to find that Hindustan Lever, which is a major tea corporation, had attempted to evict the Adivasis from his part of the Goodalaw Valley, had attempted to evict them from their land, and they'd uprooted their tea by way of scare tactic, basically, which is obviously totally outrageous. And at a protest meeting in front of the Hindustan Lever offices, Bowman announced to the management of Hindustan Lever, we have friends in Germany and we can send them an email and we can tell them how this big tea company with thousands of acres of land is evicting Adivasis from their small pieces of land. They'll put it in all the newspapers in Germany and people there will stop drinking your tea. It later transpired that Hindustan Lever felt threatened by this, and they had checked it out. They'd found that his threat was credible. They backed off. And they left their tea growing alone. And so today, the people of Kanjakoli, which is his part of the Goodalaw Valley, still have their tea fields standing. So I just think that's a wonderful illustration of what can be done and what the Adivasis have done. So coming together to form the AMS helped the Adivasis take control of their land and enter the tea business. It's also sparked many other initiatives which are improving livelihoods and the quality of life for their members. For example, the Adivasis have been disappointed with the quality of the government education system and have had a lack of access to that traditionally. So they've set up their own training centre to train people to become education workers and teachers. And this school is also a model school for Adivasi children, which maintains teaching in Adivasi culture Adivasi handicrafts, the languages, and so on. And they run other education initiatives such as education centres in the villages, a mobile library and science lab, things which go out across the region to reach people in their villages if they don't have access to the Adivasi school in Gudalore. They're also supporting their members to start saving, and this is a workshop about savings that's shown in this picture. And you'll see that all of the people attending, apart from the facilitator, I think is a man, yeah, they're all women. And it's often women in families in India that take on the burden of debt, and it can cause enormous pressures. And so trying to encourage saving and to support people and encourage them to do that is really important. It helps people make sure that their children can stay in school. It helps them be able to have a pot of money to seek to pay for medical bills if they need help. It can cover when there's a loss of income due to illness and so on. So saving is really important, and that's something that's taken off more in the area thanks to the AMS. So the final part of the Just Change, or of this story if you like, is the setting up of Just Change itself. So that was launched in India in 2001. So though the Adivasi Manetra Sangam, the AMF, had achieved a huge amount, by the late 1990s they were facing a new set of challenges. And in their own words, this is taken from their website, it says, earlier we had to fight the local landlord or the local government official. But sometimes now we feel like the force against which we have to fight in our quest for self-reliance is faceless. So this faceless adversary is, of course, the global marketplace. And in the 1990s, crashing tea prices brought home the need to really protect themselves against the unpredictability of the market. And once again, they were determined to try and take control of the factors that were influencing their livelihoods. And they wanted to hold up a model of trading that was fair and that had a human face. But how could they do this was the question they asked themselves. And inspiration came, when a group of women weavers from another part of India called Kandigram visited the Adivasis in Gudalore. And these women bought saris, beautiful saris that they weaved with them to offer to sell to the Adivasis. They were selling them for 125 rupees each. And these were saris which in Gudalore, the same saris or something similar was costing twice that amount, 250 rupees. So of course every single sari that they bought with them was snapped up straight away. The weavers were delighted. They had just earned double what they would have been able to sell their saris for to their local shopkeepers and sari dealers. And the Adivasis were delighted. They'd paid half the price that they would normally pay in their local shops for these wonderful saris. And with the surplus cash that the visiting women had from selling those saris, they bought some tea from the Adivasis. Some tea. They took it back to have for themselves. Some of them took it back to sell on to friends and family at a profit to them, but at less than the price that people back home would have been paying for tea in the local shops. And so really everyone was a winner, and all of them were stunned at the difference in the income that they had been able to create for themselves and the price that they had paid for these goods from this one transaction of saris and tea. And that was the beginning of the idea, and from there it kept growing, and Just Change groups began to join the Just Change family and trade in other products like soap and spices, which is shown here. So this is soap making, actually. It's all made by hand. So what had just happened was a direct and a fair transaction where everyone had received more than they normally would when selling to local dealers, and where everyone had been able to buy goods for themselves at an affordable price. Producers and consumers alike had benefited. And from this idea, Just Change India took off and continued to bring other producer groups on board. They now sell a whole variety of goods, including tea, rice, spices, soap, range of things. And this is helping build a more stable domestic market for their members and giving access to affordable goods. And the goods are distributed throughout the Just Change India network through what's called village consumer societies, village shops and warehouses essentially. And essential goods which can't yet be sourced from within the Just Change family are bought on the open market in bulk so they can get a fairer price, and then sold on to their members at a lower price than they would have to pay in the shops. At the start of Just Change, only 18% of the goods they were trading came from within their membership. They're now up to 60%, and what they want to do is keep increasing that over time and become more and more self-sufficient amongst themselves. That's the idea. And this picture shows a meeting of one of the village societies. So on to the UK, the last part of the story. So from India, the Just Change story continued to the UK and eventually to this place, right here, which is the Marsh Farm estate near Luton in Bedfordshire. How did that happen, you might ask? Well, in 1994, Stan and Mari, the founders of Just Change, were in Britain to do a study of UK poverty and to look at the experience of poverty here compared to experiences of poverty in India. They were brought here by Oxfam to do that. And they were appalled to find people living on housing estates, drinking a lot of tea. They were stunned by how much tea we drink here. And they were really sort of taken aback that these people were drinking lots of tea but couldn't afford at that time to buy fair trade tea. Now this is sort of back in the mid-90s, so it's quite a time ago, and it's at a time when fair trade tea was more expensive and was not sold as widely, so it wasn't as accessible for everyone. Obviously that's changed now, but this was a different time. More importantly, they were struck by the fact that people in the UK, as well as in India and all over the world, were struggling against forces outside of their control that made it hard for them to earn a decent living and afford decent, fairly traded goods. And what they wanted to do was to try and link these groups in solidarity and to build a different and a fairer way of trading. And so in 2002, with the help of a grant from Oxfam, Just Change UK was formed, and the hope was that we would be able to trade directly between Adivasis in India and disadvantaged communities in the UK for mutual benefit. Just Change UK started by importing a ton of tea directly from the Adivasis, and Just Change India said, take this tea, use it to create opportunities for income, sell it in disadvantaged communities in the UK, and pay us back once you've sold it all. So this was a completely, it was a reversal of the traditional way of development, if you like. This wasn't the UK saying, let's help India. This was India saying, let's help the UK, because they had been so struck by the experiences of poverty that Stan and Mari had seen. And this was sort of brought home even more in 2005, when two groups of Adivasis from Goodalaw Valley came and visited the UK, and they met residents from this place, from Marsh Farm. Marsh Farm is an area of high unemployment and low opportunities, and the people there are facing some quite serious struggles. And so the Adivasis and the residents of Marsh Farm exchanged stories of eviction, homelessness, joblessness in the UK, and of land, trying to assert land rights and squatting and fighting against the authorities in India. And they recognise that they have much in common, despite their huge geographical and sort of cultural distance, if you like. And they formed a really strong bond. Now, Marsh Farm has since become the first community partner to join Just Change UK, the original community partner, if you like. And they're actually the distribution hub for our goods across the South and the Midlands, so our tea is stored there and they distribute it on to various customers in that part of the country. They're also looking to build their own enterprise in the region, selling tea across Luton and the surrounds as a way of generating income for their own community and their own projects. And this is exactly the kind of thing which Stan and Mari envisaged would happen all those years ago when they started Just Change. So as well as voluntary support from the residents of Marsh Farm, we have Just Change UK has other individuals and groups of volunteers in various parts of the country. And these local volunteers do all kinds of things. They spread the word about Just Change, they sell our products at local events and markets, they forge relationships with local shops to get this tea stocked and then manage those trading activities. They help run our website, everything that they help with importing, everything that we do is thanks to volunteers. And for example, this is Shobita. She leads the way in our Oxford operations. In fact, she's a bit of a one-woman army. She's really amazing. And she works with a number of organisations local to her, including, for example, including an organisation called Restore. They support people in the Oxfordshire area with mental health difficulties. They're selling Just Change tea in their cafe, which is staffed by people with mental health challenges, and they're planning to make tea paraphernalia, apparently. coasters, tea cozies, who knows, I don't know. It's quite exciting to see what we're going to get. They're going to make those kinds of things in some of their workshops, and they also plan to sell those. And all of that is generating an income which is put back into Restore and into their activities to support people with mental health challenges. Shobit has also forged a relationship with a women's business network on the Blackbird Leys housing estate. Blackbird Leys is one of the most sort of challenging housing estates in the country. And some women there have formed their own business network in all kinds of services like babysitting services, selling organic toiletries, various just, you know, small scale economic activity where they're trying to generate some income for themselves and build their self-reliance. They're now selling tea, Just Change Tea, across the estate as one of those initiatives. So just as with that original exchange of saris and tea back in Goodalore all those years ago, these partnerships are about using Just Change Tea and spices as well, I should say, as a springboard, as a way of creating opportunities for access to affordable, fairly traded goods and for income creation, which can be ploughed back into the local community. It's also, of course, about solidarity and about enabling trade that has a human face, you know, about connecting people back to the people behind the products that they're having. And Shobit actually recently made a really wonderful film. I can tell people how to find it on YouTube if you're interested, which looked at women on the Blackbird Leys estate in Oxford selling tea and talking about their experiences, and also at women in Goodalore who've been growing tea, and sort of brought them together, and they shared what their lives were like, basically, in simple terms, and even down to how they each made tea and how different that was. And the women in Goodalore are shown saying, we thought women in England were rich, you know, we thought they had everything that they needed, but they're not. They have challenges too. And that really surprised them. And that kind of exchange is something which Just Change UK is keen to build more and more opportunities for, as I say, to bring a human face and a human dimension to that trade. So that's the story so far. But what about the future? Well, so far Just Change has developed this alternative way of doing business, built on transparency and respect and seeking mutual benefit for producers and consumers. Another area which Just Change India are very keen to develop is bringing investors into the frame as well. So Stan Thikekara, the founder of Just Change, talks about something called participative capital. And he reflects on how when money is in the hands of poor people, it flows out of their hands very quickly like water. So money comes in, and as quickly as it comes in, it has to go out again to pay for essentials like food, school fees, whatever it is. But the minute it moves from the consumer, from the poor person who's buying these goods, it's onto the shopkeeper, it changes status, it becomes capital, because then that shopkeeper can then reinvest it back into their business and use it to make more money. And so all of this capital comes from poor people, and yet their participation in the economy brings them very limited returns. They spend their money, it's gone, and then they never get it back again. And this, many would argue, is unjust and unfair. So what Just Change India would like to develop is a model where capital becomes participative, so where Just Change members can pool their money, can bring their capital together to build their own business and their own trading opportunities collectively. And if every Just Change member, of which there are tens of thousands in India now, so the India side of the Just Change family is by far the biggest, it's much bigger than the UK operation. If everyone can invest just a little, then this will build up and can be reinvested into the business for everyone's benefit. And in this model, everyone's contribution to the economy is recognised as important. So whether you're a producer, a consumer, an investor, or you're more than one of these, as we often are, actually if you stop and think about it, we're all consumers, some of us are producers as well, some of us are investors too. But the idea is that however small your investment, you should be able to reap a fair return, and your participation in the economy should be maximised for mutual benefit and for the good of everybody, and to help people build a decent livelihood, make trade a human exchange and not a faceless activity. That's the idea behind it. So that's sort of the future of Just Change India and where they'd like to take their initiative next. So I'll finish up here. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation, and I hope you're enjoying the tea, more importantly. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, if you've been inspired by what you've heard, then there are lots of things that you can do. to get involved. So first of all, you can have a cup of tea. So tick that off your list. Most of you have done it already. If you like it, please do buy, shameless plug, some Just Change tea to take home with you. It is on special offer, I believe, today. Today is the day to buy it. If you're going to buy it today. And you can take it home and give it a try. Or next time you come to the Fig Tree, buy some tea then. You could also sell Just Change tea. So if you're involved with an organisation where you think you could sell some tea, whether that's a school or a business or whatever it is, either as hot tea or as packs of tea, then come and talk to me about that, and I can let you know how you can get some stock. If you're a teacher or you're involved with schools in the area, we're very fortunate to have some fantastic teaching resources, some really lovely education packs, photos, PowerPoint presentations, worksheets, all sorts of things, which are about Just Change and about life for the Adivasis in the Guddalore Valley of India. There's a programme called Chembakoli, which was set up by ActionAid, and that's it's been going for over 10 years, and it's an enormous wealth of teaching resources, all freely accessible, which covers the whole sort of spectrum of life in the Guddalore Valley, everything from what school is like, to what homes are like, to what food is like, transport, tea farming, the whole bit. So it's a really, really brilliant set of resources. If you're interested in that, come and talk to me. I can tell you how to access it. We're also looking for people who have an interest or an expertise in investment, in alternative investment, and how we can build up that model and develop it in India. So if you happen to have an interest in that or some experience in it, please do come and talk to me. And lastly, we're always looking for volunteers. Who do all kinds of things. So for example, we're looking at the moment in particular for people with web or social media expertise to help us redevelop our website and our social media face on Facebook and Twitter and all those things. If you are interested in selling tea at events that you might be involved in, or if you feel like you want to get involved because you're inspired but you're not yet sure what you could do, please do come and talk to me. And we really do rely on volunteers. Some people give an hour a month, some people give a day a week. Everyone's contribution is varied and really, really valid, and that's absolutely the lifeblood of what we do. Just Change wouldn't exist without volunteers, and that's how we operate. So I will finish there. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'm available if anyone has any questions or comments, indeed, that they would like to make. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise. That was fantastic. I don't know if you've seen it already, but they have a wonderful strap line for Just Change. Yes. Just Change tea, where no one makes a killing, but everyone makes a living, which I think is absolutely fantastic. We are very proud to be selling Just Change tea here. Like with our Aroma coffee, like with our Divine chocolate and the Just Change tea, we don't make a killing. We don't make a massive profit in the Fig Tree here on selling those products. But hopefully, with your help and your support, we will make enough profit from these products in order to keep the Fig Tree alive, in order to keep it living. Like Just Change, all this relies on your support and your help as volunteers and as consumers buying your products. I've always been a great admirer on the marketing side of Marks and Spencer's adverts, which I'm sure you all know them. This is not just jam, it's Marks and Spencer's jam. And I've always thought that's very, very clever, and they're going to the quality of the products. But here at the Fig Tree, and I say this from my heart, we do that, if I may say so, for real, from our hearts. Because we like to say that all our products isn't just tea, or just chocolate, or just coffee, but we want you to know about the people behind them. Because then they are a lot nicer. They are excellent quality products anyway. We don't have to shout about the quality of them, I don't feel. You can taste that for yourselves. But when you know about the people behind them, they taste better. I always say I love Divine chocolate. You probably all guessed that already. But it tastes 1,000,000 times better to me because when I eat it, I think my friends in Ghana have produced the cocoa that goes in that chocolate. When we had the coffee event, the coffee at the Fig Tree event in Fairtrade Fortnight, when people found out about Aroma coffee, about our Grumpy Mule coffee, it's amazing how the sales of the Aroma coffee boosted after that. I hope to goodness this will be the same. Now that you know about this tea, it's not just tea. It's much more than that. So please, when you go and buy your tea, come back to the Fig Tree, buy it here. We are the only people in Garston selling it at the moment. I hope to goodness we won't always be, but we are at the moment. Come back and buy your tea from us, because the Fig Tree is a community interest company. It relies, like Just Change, it relies on the wonderful work of our volunteers, and it relies on people from the community supporting us. So we need you in order to for us to give you what we supply. So thank you very much. I think we've got 10 minutes for questions, and then we're going to have some more music from Izzy and June. And then, of course, Louise will be around for questions while music's playing, and at the end as well.
Yeah.
So questions.
How long does it take from picking the leads to receiving the money for payments for selling the tea itself at the end?
Selling the end product,
Yes.
as in selling this when it's in a packet and it's sold in the UK. Well, the Adivasis that produce the tea are paid everything that they're owed right at the start of the chain, so they don't have to wait for this to be sold to get their return. No, so the Adivasis that produce their own tea on their own small plots are paid at the point where that tea is weighed, when it's so that immediately.
Dried first.
No, it's collected as green leaf. So it's picked, it's collected, then the ATLM, the truck, goes from village to village and buys the tea at the roadside on the spot. So it's taken as fresh green leaf, and that's the point where the Adivasis are paid, for what they're, So there isn't a delay, basically. They're paid at the point where it's sold. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I was also thinking it's rather strongly flavoured.
Oh, right.
Different types of tea, or is it just the one kind?
Are there other types grown there, or in general?
Well, no change to tea. Is it just the one variety, or are there?
Yes, it is. It's a pure Nilgiri tea. So the Nilgiri Hills, where Just Change tea is produced, is a big tea growing area. And Nilgiri tea itself, you'll see it in other places. You know, if you were to Google it, you would see different labels selling Nilgiri tea. So it's a variety in itself. And the Just Change tea is pure Nilgiri tea. Yeah, which is so it's a bit different. It's different to what you would normally. Traditionally in Britain, most of the tea that we drink, you know, whether it be PG Tips, heaven forbid, or even a supermarket own label fair trade tea or something like that, it's normally a blend of East African and South Asian tea. That's the kind of typical British taste. But this is a pure Indian, pure Nilgiri tea.
Sorry, I don't think you've quite appreciated it. It's strongly flavoured because of the spices that are in it.
Oh, this isn't chai.
Not the flavour of the tea.
No, I don't. It's actually. I don't think the chai is ready yet. Oh, that's the chai. I see. So you're drinking chai. Okay, so what you're drinking is Just Change tea, but with added spices, which has been brewed up in the kitchen here. Yeah, we wanted people to experience not just the Just Change tea as we have it here. You know, a bit of water, a bit of milk, maybe a bit of sugar, but as it's drunk in India, which is. And if you're interested in the recipe, there are some recipe sheets on the counter there. Please feel free to take one home if you'd like to. It's very easy to make, and if we run out of recipe sheets, I can easily give you the details. So yeah, try and make it at home.
So just to be clear, all the tea that we serve in the Fig Tree is Just Change tea. So if you order a pot of tea at any time when we're open, it's Just Change tea. What you're having at the moment is
specially made to a special recipe.
For that chai tea, if you like it, are available at the counter.
Yeah.
You had a question?
Yeah.
You've seen this movement spreading to the tea growers in the northeastern part of India as well.
Maybe. I mean, Stan and Mari and the Adivasis of Just Change India, their vision is big and broad. You know, what they would like to do is take this model of, you know, alternative, fair, direct trading and develop it anywhere where there is a need and where there's an opportunity and a connection to do it. So yeah, maybe they will. At the moment, they don't have any sort of contact, I think, with other tea producers, partly because they are, one of their challenges is building up a market for their own tea. So they've got quite a lot of tea to sell. They're selling a bit to the UK, a bit to Germany, quite a lot domestically, but they still need to build up their own base of customers, if you like. But no, certainly there might be a possibility for that. And
It's a very important part of the economy as well.
very, very important. Yeah, very important. And actually, we've talked a little bit about maybe doing some different types of tea. So maybe we could develop a stronger blend, for example, which would mean that we would need to mix it with some different types of Indian tea to create that different flavour. So we might start looking for groups that we could work with to do that in the future.
There has been a movement towards trapping the freshness of tea immediately after processing in barrier filling. And this, let's say, if you go to the shop and buy Taifu tea, it tastes a little bit different from others. Now, is the same being used for the just chain tea?
I don't know. What is that technique called? What is it called?
Once you process the tea immediately,
Yep.
you package it in barrier filling.
Oh,
that,
before
you
export.
Prevent it from further oxygenation,
Right.
which would then cause it to deteriorate in terms of the beneficial effects
Yeah.
of tea and freshness plus the aroma.
Yeah.
And this is something that has been considered and is being used for the last 10 years or so. Is it something that is being done for your tea? Because
No, not at
you
the
may
moment.
find that others who use the system may try to give to have an edge.
An advantage.
And that one, that barrier filling is not, the whole technique is not very out of the way of so technical. It's just barrier filling, co-extruded, and they're just a vacuum machine.
It might be that it's something that is being explored in India. I don't know. I know that we don't do that
The technology
at the
there,
moment. So at the moment, the tea is packed in foil-lined paper sacks, basically, which is the industry kind of standard. Tea used to come to the UK and other markets in jute sacks, but these days it comes in a foil-lined paper sack, and it can actually, if it's packed properly, it can be stored like that and apparently remain completely fresh for 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's
It's
how.
something similar to
Yeah.
that, but some people have gone a little bit.
I'll find out. It might be that they're exploring it.
Yeah.
Might be it's being explored.
The Adivasi people seem to lose control of their product effectively in the green leaf tea stage.
Yeah.
Would it not be a thought for them to bring in the processing plants? Because I know in some of the larger plantations, they actually dry the tea on the plantations themselves. Now in that case, there's about a third of the land is kept under trees to be used in the drying kilns.
Drying tea.
The Adivasi already keep their trees, so they've already got the potential to do that.
Yeah, it is something that's been talked about on and off a lot. And I asked the exact same question to Stan just recently. The challenge is, Stan's, it's funny, he said to me, oh, you can buy a tea factory for a song round here, Tea factories in that part of India, small independent tea factories, are closing down at a rate of knots because the market is so tough, it's so challenging. And so there's a huge risk involved in investing in that asset and that infrastructure. And at the moment, Just Change India feel nervous about doing that, about sinking that kind of capital in an uncertain marketplace and taking that risk. And so it's not something they want to do at the moment. But maybe in the long term, maybe if they can build up a bigger market and be in a stronger financial position to be able to take a little bit of risk, then that might be something that they want to do. But at the moment, they feel that the best sort of compromise, if you like, is to, yes, at the moment they have to sell their tea to somebody else's factory, but what they've done is negotiated that deal where at least there is a minimum floor price and the Adivasis are protected from total crashes in that way. And so that's kind of been the compromise, if you like, that they've struck. It's not out of the question in the long term. Yeah.
Okay, one last question, and then we're going to hand back over to June and Izzy for some more music.
not a question, but in 1945 I served in India, and every morning I had a mug full of this tea from the Chaiwala.
The Chaiwala.
Right.
Fantastic.
Now, I thought to myself, yes, this is great. The only thing that's needed is a piece of Mem Saab cake.
And you have it.
There you are.
Yes, the story's complete.
Very good. That's a good note to end. There's still some Mensa cake. There's still some cake left, made by my wonderful daughter Anna,
Wow.
who's our cake maker. There's still some wonderful cake left over. I think there's still some chai tea, is there?
I hope so. I haven't
Still
had
some chai
any.
tea.
I really
And of
want
course, if you want to have ordinary tea or coffee even, dare I say it, please help yourself. It's available. So I'm now going to hand you back over to Izzy and June. And don't forget the special offer. I mean, we have it over here, but maybe I'll put this card on the desk. Special offer for today and tomorrow only. So please do make use of this.
Take it.
Special. We've got plenty of tea. If it's not on here, we've got plenty more behind as well. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.